Most corporate strategy presentations consist of overlapping text boxes and microscopic charts that result in a disorganized pile of information. Deliverables produced by Tier 1 consulting firms rely on aggressive minimalism to solve this problem. To understand the mechanics of this minimalism, an analyst used an LLM to extract empirical data from 1,000 authentic McKinsey strategy slides. The findings show that elite communication prioritizes strict structural discipline over complex aesthetic design. A top-tier strategy slide exists specifically to eliminate executive cognitive load. We can see this discipline in action by reverse engineering a highly effective 3-slide sequence. This analysis covers 3 operational layers: the macro narrative, the meso layout, and the micro evidence. This sequence details corporate innovation and economic profit during the COVID-19 crisis. Stripping away the visual polish reveals the structural wireframes that govern the information. These wireframes make the statistical rules governing executive comprehension visible and reproducible. The macro layer dictates how information chains together across a multi-slide deck. Isolating the titles of our sequence removes the distraction of the underlying charts. The dataset shows the average slide title is exactly 14 words long. Within that limit, 72% of the titles utilize active voice, result-oriented phrasing. Passive categorical labels like Q3 metrics force the audience to deduce the point. Active titles provide the conclusion immediately. This phrasing creates narrative chaining between sequential slides. Read in order, the titles form a story. Companies deprioritized innovation during COVID. Those who invested actually outperformed, and they generated higher economic profit. These linked titles form a logical argument that stands entirely on its own. Elite slides function as sequential sentences within a broader strategic narrative. The meso layer defines how complexity is physically constrained on a single canvas. Roughly 76% of slides follow the one-job rule, focusing on a single clear message. This focus is maintained through strict density limits, with the average slide containing 100 words. Any slide exceeding the 200-word threshold is usually moved to the appendix. When an idea is too complex for one slide, consultants manage the density by splitting it into 2 distinct wireframes. Unlimited slide counts allow for total isolation of ideas. This modularity decreases cognitive burden, even as the presentation length increases. This modularity is enforced through a deliberately restricted set of structural layouts. 4 dominant layouts account for 70%. Standardization ensures the audience focuses on data, rather than learning new layouts. Predictable grids preserve mental energy for strategic insights. The micro layer involves the empirical selection and formatting of visual evidence. Over 71% of slides contain at least one chart to provide quantitative proof for the argument. Nearly 60% of those slides use a solitary graphic to prove their point. Bar charts are the primary visual tool, appearing on 40% of all charts used. Line charts account for 15.9%, followed by waterfall charts at 10.8%. Waterfall charts are specifically useful for visualizing value breakdowns and sequential maturity phases. The final element is the callout, which directs the audience's eye to the most important data point. A 72% utilization rate for callouts ensures that the intended interpretation of the data is clear. Elite charts aggressively point out the specific anomaly that proves the slide's active title. We can now reassemble these components into a unified framework. These structural rules snap together to create a cohesive strategic deliverable. This hierarchy places a 14-word active title above a single annotated chart with a precise callout. This architecture fits within a total limit of roughly 100 words. While the underlying modeling is complex, the empirical presentation format is strictly simple. These statistics point to a single professional principle: top-down communication. Standardized design grids allow the executive to focus entirely on the insight. Deviating from these empirical baselines increases the audience's cognitive load and dilutes the argument. Removing visual friction allows executive teams to process insights without hesitation, engineering a frictionless path from raw data to decisive action.